Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the January 22nd, 2018 Board of Selectmen's meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Rio,
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know it's me. I was checking to make sure everyone was up.
That's you.
Oh, is that me, Mr. Real?
All right. Citizen statements and petitions. Anybody have any citizen statements or petitions? Do you have a citizen statement or petition? Yes. Okay, come on up.
Does it matter where I sit?
You could just sit right here. That's fine. If you would, just your name and address, please.
Courtney McCary, 5 Blueberry Drive, Mendon, Mass.
Yeah, I can't really.
Hold the microphone towards you.
No, it's gone. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Courtney McCary, 5 Blueberry Drive, Mendon, Mass.
Okay.
Today, I'm speaking to you guys about a concern that I have as a resident of the town of Mendon. There have been a lot of gunshots that I've been hearing as a result of people target shooting in the Strawberry Lane and Butler Road area. Many of my neighbors also have young children, and they're afraid to go outside for fear of stray bullets. My father, Reginald McCary, is also a Vietnam veteran, so having veterans in the neighborhood, it's hard for them to sort of cope, as about 20% of veterans still have PTSD, and having this issue is very hard for a lot of people to cope with just whatever's going on. I was hoping that something would come out of me bringing this forward. I do have copies of what I wrote down for you, if you'd like them.
Okay. So, something like this, I would have to defer to the chief.
Okay.
And let the chief respond to this, I think is a first step. Would you agree?
Mr. Burke, I have a property on the other side on Blackstone Street. I bought the 138 Blackstone Street, and I can hear the same. I know exactly what they're referring to. I have indeed had a conversation with the chief about this. I think we're at limited ability to do anything about it, but I agree with you. I think we should ask the chief to comment.
Yeah. Chief, do you want to make a comment tonight, or do you want to look into it?
Well, if I can see that complaint, and then we can,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I can address it at the next meeting if you want, or I can read it now, address it at the end of the meeting if you want.
Well, just out of respect to time and respect to your time, and we have a lot to cover tonight, why don't we let the chief review it, and then the chief can respond back to you and also respond back to this board, and if we need to add it to another agenda, we can have the chief just bring it to us, and we'll invite you back in. How's that?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks for coming in.
And I can, if you want, you can come down and see this evening. Or I can come see you, because obviously you can't go to so
Thanks.
I don't mind coming down and see you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other citizen statements or petitions? All right, hearing none, seeing none. Correspondence to the board. Do we have any correspondence to the board? Okay.
I've got some text messages that they're able to hear us and see us fine this time, so I think we're good.
Okay,
As
good.
far as at home, yeah.
All right, good. Looks like we're skipping over number 4, which is approving the bond sale for the new police station. We have a public hearing at 7 o'clock, so we'll skip over that right now. Let's see. So that brings me to number 6, interview and consider the appointment of Kathleen Nicholson to the Taxation Aid Committee. Do we have Kathleen here?
Yes, we do.
Hey, Kathleen, come on up.
And the chair.
We have the chair as well. Yep.
Believe it or not, Kathleen and I used to have the same hairstyle back in the 80s, didn't we, Kathleen?
I would prefer for that not to be on record.
Too late.
Okay, so why don't you tell us about yourself, Kathleen?
All right. I am interested in becoming part of the tax aid committee in Mendon. I've been involved, as you know, with the Mendon 350th Anniversary Committee over the last couple of years, and I've gotten to know a little bit about the town and the town budgeting process over the years. We've been in Mendon since 2003, and we have 3 children in the school district. So over time, I've learned about the budget process and learned all about state funding formulas and unfunded mandates and all this kind of thing. And because of many of those budget reasons, locally, our taxes have increased over time. And the burden of those tax increases really falls a lot on those with fixed incomes, which tend to be the elderly and the disabled. And this is exactly what this tax aid committee is intended to do, is to help individuals that may be having a difficult time meeting the tax burden. And so that is why I want to get involved. I was really happy when Elena and her group initiated the committee, and then when they had a vacancy this year, and I believe I'm the only person that actually came forward for the spot. I'd really like to give back in this regard.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Kathleen, knowing you and seeing what you've done on other committees, I think you're a perfect candidate for this. I know by you sitting up here, you totally support this recommendation as well. Do you guys got any questions?
No, I wanted to make a comment, which is that so often you see people, when they get what they want at in a political form, at a local level, what have you, they get it and then they run, right? Now, Mrs. Nicholson obviously was hugely important in the override that she felt we needed and others felt we needed for the schools, and then she could very well just run and say, okay, that's it, I got what I wanted. But she cares about the whole issue, and that's the biggest thing I like about this, and I really would highly support her appointment for that position.
Yeah, I would agree. Obviously, you've been committed to a lot of different aspects of the community, and so to see you step up for this position is very enticing for us to be able to appoint you for.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments on this, guys? So I'll take a motion, Mark.
I move to appoint Kathleen Nicholson to the Taxation Aid Committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Condolences.
Thank you so much.
I think she knows what she's getting into.
I think so, too.
Yeah. We're going to table agenda item number 7. So number 8. I could probably get through this pretty quickly. Consider the town website as the official method to post meeting agendas in accordance with open meeting law. Changes in October 2017, CMR 29.03. Take a motion, Mark.
I move to consider the town website as the official method to post meeting agendas in accordance with the open meeting law changes as of October 2017, CMR 29.03.
Second.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, Margaret.
Well, I just wanted to bring this to you to have this vote taken formally so that we can send it into the Attorney General's office and for future postings and stuff. I mean, we only use the website. We have a board downstairs, which we are going to continue to use. But I was out sick for a while, and there was a period of time where I had to post meetings from home. And I had somebody here that would get the email from me and then post them on the board downstairs just to make sure everything was posted. And this would do away with having to do that if the situation arises again.
Oh, okay, so just so we're crystal clear, should the motion not say as the primary official method, right? Because you're not suggesting that we don't do anything else anymore. All you're saying is in order to satisfy
As the
open meeting
official-
law as the minimum official location to post for situations like this, you
Yes.
do it. But where possible, you'll do all of what you've
Oh, yeah.
been doing.
Where possible, we will do whatever. But say we were having a snowstorm on a Tuesday and somebody didn't get their meeting posting to me on Monday, and we're not in the office on Tuesday, and they were meeting Thursday night, I could post it from home.
Right, but then when you came in before the meeting,
Then when
you
I
still
came in,
put
it
it
would
up.
still go on the board.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that's all I wanted to be clear.
All right, so if we want to add primary into that, that's
I don't
fine.
think.
I don't know if that's necessary. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that that's what we were doing.
Okay, very good. All right, any further discussion on that, guys?
No.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Do we have enough
Thank you,
time for the...
Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret. Do we have enough time for the warrant?
Yeah, this,
Okay, so over to 9, consider opening the warrant for the May 4th, 2018 annual town meeting.
I move to open the warrant for the May 4th, 2018 annual town meeting.
Second.
Discussion on that.
So do we have a list of
No, we're just open.
articles yet, or no? Just a-
no, I mean, it opens today,
Okay.
right? Well,
Well, sometimes you collect stuff ahead
it
of time.
should close March 12th. So it's about a week earlier than usual, so we encourage people to get it in a little bit earlier.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have warrants. All right, so the next thing on the agenda is to discuss the shared services with MRI. I assume the large turnout is to hear that we do have a public hearing at 7 o'clock. So what I'm willing to do is open up the discussion with MRI, and then what we'll need to do, assuming that it's going to go longer than 15 minutes, we'll pause, and then we'll reconvene on that discussion. How's that? Thank you. Before we start, I thought it would be beneficial just to make a few comments and set some ground rules before we start. I want to be clear that this discussion is purely informational. The board has not made any decisions at this point. We're purely discussing this topic that from the recommendation from our consultants, MRI, who are here tonight, and will provide us with an overview of the type of service, what these types of services may look like if we choose to do this with another community. Clearly, there's a lot to tease out. Well prior to Mendon making any decisions going forward with shared services. Simultaneously, the town will continue our search for a permanent full-time fire chief. In the interim, due to our challenges for our continuing search for a permanent fire chief, we've decided to enter into an agreement with an intern fire chief with the assistance of our consultant MRI. This, I guarantee this will not be our last discussion regarding this topic. I guarantee it. As mentioned, there's a lot to tease out. We have a lot to discuss. This is purely informational. I know nothing about it. I anticipate and recommend that the board will conduct coffee hours. I'd like to recommend that to you guys. We've done this in the past where we've had coffee hours. I would recommend just doing a Saturday again down the senior center or here where folks can come in, and it gives us an opportunity and a vehicle to really to talk this discussion through. Our board is committed to ensuring that our community is safe and has the much-needed management oversight as suggested by our consultants. We are working our hardest to provide the best solution possible for our community, and that's one of the reasons why we're going through this informational session. Just want to make sure that that's clear to everybody. I've heard a lot of anecdotal statements lately that suggest differently. That's the fact. We're just looking at this from an informational standpoint. So for the ground rules, I want to hold all questions until MRI has completed their presentation and that the board has an opportunity to ask some questions. I will then open up questions to the audience, but I'm going to ask the questions to be limited and to the point and to be respectful. I will call on people to have their questions heard in order of priority based off how they raise their hand. I want you to state your name and address for the record. We have a lot of people here tonight that normally aren't here, so I'm glad that you're excited about this topic. It's good to get good feedback. Again, I expect all comments to be respectful and to the point. In respect to time, we'll keep it to a limit. And due to the sensitivity to time, I will definitely dismiss redundant questions or comments. I think that, it's a respectful conversation, and it's purely informational on our standpoint as the board. So again, I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. Our goal is to let all who want to be heard in a respectful way. Please keep in mind that this is the beginning of what I assume is many working sessions. Okay? All right, thank you. All right, and that being said, I will pass this over to our consultant, MRI. So Sean, if you will, just for the record, your name and who you represent.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Sean Murray. I'm a senior consultant with MRI Resources, Inc., from Meredith, New Hampshire. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come before you and present our proposal review for you. If I may quickly, I'd like to thank your police chief for his assistance in helping me find my way around town and to meet with some of the other interested parties too, so I appreciate that. Next slide. So I'll quickly go over the scope of work that we did. The Board of Selectmen requested MRI to review proposals for the feasibility of shared services between the Mendon Fire Department and other interested parties. 3 proposals were received in alphabetical order. Blackstone Fire Department. Interviews were held with the fire chiefs who submitted proposals from those communities by myself and Chief David Kersey. Blackstone and Uxbridge Fire Department interviews were on Wednesday, January 3rd, and Hopedale Fire Department interview was on Monday, January 8th. The scope of the work was to create a community demographics comparison spreadsheet, which we created and entered the data input and the data analyzed from that. And a copy of that is available at the end of the presentation and standalone.
Can I interrupt you real quickly?
Sure.
Are you running the presentation? Can you go into presentation mode so it's bigger so the people in the far away can see? Bottom right-hand corner, the little, just to the left of the left of the Zoom. Oh, okay. Right there, right there. Got it. There you go. That should come up. Yeah, thank you.
There we go.
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
We then conducted the interviews. We had proposals reviewed and analyzed them. We also had some supplemental questions that were developed and we sent to the interested parties. And then tonight's purpose is to present an overview to you, the Board of Selectmen. I want to talk a little bit about shared services first, and some of the benefits and what shared services are overall. And essentially, it's a building of strategic alliances between fire departments. And it's not only a way to cope with a current environment, but it's a way to provide an efficient and effective means to deliver service quicker, better, and possibly even cheaper. More and more fire service organizations are looking at ways to share their critical services with one another, and that's in order to be able to address some critical barriers to continued service delivery. And it's not only local, it's happening nationwide, and I'm sure you've seen the news on the declining volunteer and call firefighter force. Sharing services, though, does not necessarily mean a full-out merger of two or more organizations either. And I'll show you some different models as we go through here. There are various types of shared services. One known as an administrative shared services, where two or more fire departments remain legally separate, but groups from each perform special functions, such as the sharing of staffing, or sharing a fire station, a fire chief, developing jointly owned training facilities, or agreeing to train together, creating joint powers agreements in order to get benefit from purchasing large pieces of equipment, or SCBA, and also it helps with owning capital infrastructure such as radios, SCBA, or turnout gear. The next one is a functional type of shared service, and this is legally separate, but they perform as if they're one department. And I'm sure you've seen some examples before, such as combined dispatch, combined training, and standardized on-scene protocols locally and regionally. After functional is operational. This is where the shared services remain legally separate, but joint admin and operations and delivery of services is performed as if it's one department. Then in larger cities, what is known as selected geographical, those are departments that combine in low incident areas to help each other. And then you have a full type of shared services where both agencies completely merge into one, and they become a single legal agency.
Before you go on to the next slide, just a question. Which of these 5 types do you view are the 3 proposals to fit into?
I actually think there may be a couple of them that you could look at, depending on, as you move forward, if you look further into this, what the legalities of being able to join the 2 organizations together. So you could see operational, and or you may decide to go full.
Okay. Thank you.
We got about 5 minutes, just to let you know.
Okay. The on shared services benefits, what are the benefits of it? It provides improved operational flexibility and efficiency, including you get a larger larger pool of personnel. You eliminate municipal service boundaries, and during periods of high activity, if you have a consolidated department, it may allow for more effective deployment of apparatus and avoidance of extended response times. It also can result in reduced use of callbacks and overtime. Additionally, the ability of consolidated departments to create uniform procedures to serve a larger geographic area as opposed to several independent departments basically doing their own thing. When you join them together, it produces higher efficiency and enhanced safety to firefighters because everyone's basically working with the same procedures and standards. Proponents will also argue that consolidation of several small departments can present an important opportunity to establish a strong organizational culture in a new department, which could replace outdated standards and norms and emphasize best practices. So the shared services process takes many steps, obviously. Some of those steps include interest building, which you've already seen here, and it's where you develop interest in sharing services amongst the decision makers and stakeholders. It's not a one process, then it stops. It's a continual, ongoing process. If enough interest exists, then the process moves to the next phase of conducting a feasibility study. Under the feasibility study, which technically the town of Mendon has completed through the work that MRI has done, or substantially completed, it's a comprehensive study that benchmarks existing fire service by looking at a wide variety of issues. And those issues can include staffing, budget, technology, political environments, or facilities. It also, the feasibility also will determine if the shared services make sense from a service level, political, or technical. It also makes recommendations for the various shared service models, governance, funding, staffing, technology, and facilities. After feasibility is the planning phase. This is where decisions regarding participation, funding formulas, organizational structure, governance models, and human resources issues occur in that phase. Implementation transition phase. This is where you're activating the newly agreed upon shared service model. And then post-shared phase. That's a timely, immediately after activation of new shared services. During this phase, service and technology issues are common as the shared services begin to work together and move forward, but it's not usually indicative of the success or the failure of the model. And then when you're looking at that post-shared phase, you have to keep issues in the proper perspective, so you don't give up right away.
You're saying you need a settling in period.
What's that?
You're saying you need a settling in period. That's what you're saying.
Yes. So then the next slides represent...
Why don't we do this?
Stop there?
The next,
you want to stop there?
Yeah, the next slides look like they represent the different proposals.
Okay.
Is that correct? So why don't we...
That's a good place, yeah.
That's a good place to stop.
Yes.
And then we can reconvene after the public hearing, and then we'll open it up. Alrighty. So, we got 2 minutes, just bear with us, we have to wait till 7 o'clock.
This should be quick, right?
I would think this is probably 10 minutes, he's right there.
I think it's
All right. Okay, Mark.
All right. So I move to open the land use 5-year plan public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have a legal notice. The Mendon Board of Selectmen and the Mendon Community Preservation Committee hereby gives notice that there will be a public hearing January 22nd, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the Mendon Town Hall, second floor meeting room, 20 Main Street, Mendon, to receive comments on the 5-year land use program, copies of which can be found at www.mendonma.gov on the Land Use Committee page or the Town Clerk's office. And to hear suggestions for Community Preservation Act funded projects, all are welcome. For questions, you can email communitypreservation@mendonma.gov.
All right, very good. So, Ann.
So this is a public hearing to hear comments on the 5-year land use program and also suggestions for CPA projects. The CPA projects all have to be approved at a town meeting, and so, the timing is important. So people, if they're going to submit projects, they can do it anytime during the year, but if they want on the annual town meeting, it should be within the next month, submitted to the Community Preservation Committee. So this is just a period where people can make comments, but they're also welcome to come to our Land Use Committee meeting and Community Preservation Committee meeting for comments.
How many years into the 5-year plan are we at this point?
Well, it coincides with the Open Space and Recreation Plan, and it used to be that you renewed it every 5 years, but now they gave us like a 7-year period, so it'll be renewed in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But my understanding is essentially the same plan. I mean, we review this in our public hearing every year, and
Right.
every year I skim over, and it essentially does not change.
Right, unless we make a change, which we
Right.
haven't. Yeah. So.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I think just to see if there are any suggestions, right? I mean, you typically expect people to bring potentially suggestions to this hearing, right?
Yeah, I mean, they can. People tend to come to the meetings to give suggestions, the community
Yeah.
preservation or the land use, but it's in the bylaws to have the public hearing, so.
I mean, listen, I think it's been a great vehicle for our community. We've certainly been able to utilize CPA funds for many projects within the town. We've been able to purchase some property that's beneficial for the community. So it's definitely been a benefit for us. We've done an awful lot, in my opinion, over the last, few years. There's nothing that sticks in my head right away. But certainly it's a great vehicle, and it's been working for us, so.
Okay.
Any comments from you guys?
No?
No?
Okay. All right, I'll take a motion then.
Were there any in the...
Oh, I'm sorry, is there any comments from the audience? I'm sorry. I didn't see anybody raising their hand, and that's why I just assumed to jump forward. I apologize.
All right.
Go ahead, Mark.
Move to close the land use 5-year plan public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'll take
I
a motion.
move to approve the land use 5-year plan.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Nope.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann. All right, so we'll reconvene our presentation. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these, the next 3 slides are some of the proposal highlights or what we pulled out of the various proposals that were presented. It is, this is just an overview of what some of the proposals suggested. So under Blackstone, there was 24/7 fire EMS coverage for both towns with 5 personnel on duty per shift. They offered fire inspections, investigations, and fire education would be provided by them. Fire and EMS training would be provided by Blackstone. Their proposal was for personnel costs, $733,572. And then $137,200 for operations, for an estimated $868,772. And if you, as you note, I've put unaudited at the end of, and you'll see it on all three proposals. And that is because you really haven't been able to get in and really look at the proposals in any depth. Blackstone also suggests that EMS billing revenues would be retained by Blackstone itself. And they also offer that Mendon personnel can apply for positions. They must meet department current requirements to do so. That was Blackstone. Hopedale suggested 24/7 fire EMS coverage for both towns, 4 personnel on duty per shift out of the Hopedale Fire Station. They too would do fire inspections, investigations, and education. They also stated they would do fire and EMS training. Their proposal was $615,000 in personnel costs, plus $145,000 in operations, for a total of $760,000, again unaudited. They too would retain EMS billing revenues. And they also state that Mendon personnel can apply for positions, but they must meet department and civil service requirements. And last was Uxbridge. They proposed fire and EMS coverage for both towns, 5 personnel, and 3 personnel on duty Monday through Friday, staffing 7 days a week, 12 hours per day, and one part-time EMT paramedic on call nights. They too would do fire inspections, investigations, and education. Also fire and EMS training. Their proposal was $410,000 in personnel costs. However, that does not include the cost of benefits. That would have health benefits and all of that wrap up into a salary. Nor did it include the operational costs, which would be added later during planning, because they wanted to get a better idea of what the town would be looking for as far as for them to maintain for operational costs, whether it was equipment, apparatus, or buildings. They too would retain the billing revenues from EMS. And again, Mendon personnel can apply for positions, and they must meet the department current requirements. So a preliminary review of the proposals, in summary, did identify potential savings in areas such as personnel, operations, and later down the road, potential capital outlays. Savings upwards of $100,000 or more may be realized. But you would need a specific shared services plan that does a complete financial cost analysis in order to provide any specific cost savings. All 3 proposals offer shared services, as I spoke to: EMS, fire prevention, inspection, investigation, and education. And the staffing models did vary from 24/7 coverage to 12-hour day coverage and standby night coverage. We looked at the response times of each agency. Obviously, they vary different geographically, and they're dependent on if Mendon Station is staffed or if the response comes from the shared services location. Regardless, overall, you should see response time improved due to enhanced staffing and what may be an immediate response from the Shared Services Department, having personnel on duty overnight. So based on the review, interviews, and information provided by the 3 interested parties, we have ranked the proposals in the following order: Uxbridge first, Hopedale second, Blackstone third.
How close a second do you think, how close are 1 and 2 together? Is there a big gap between those two, or in your mind?
That's where we ran into difficulty. There is a gap there. The thing about where they placed in a ranking is we started to try and look at the staffing and the financial piece of it, and because their staffing proposals were so different, that we really looked at what was in the proposals that they gave us. So for example, Uxbridge gave us the most comprehensive proposal, and we were able to extract a lot of information and get a real good picture of what they were looking for. Hopedale gave us a picture, told us how many staff they might increase. So therefore, you know, to try and compare them through financial wouldn't be fair and equitable.
Okay, but I mean, you guys jump in here if you want, but to me, the only thing that matters is the service and response times to the people of Mendon.
Absolutely.
Now, you specifically, in your study, have recommended that response should be within an hour, within 1 minute, on-site within 8 minutes, 90% of the time.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
So my question to you is, how close does it get us to that response time set of metrics? I mean, we're not there now, right? So how far apart are these when you consider service levels to Mendon? Now, if that's something you can't answer right off the top of your head, that's fine. But
yeah, again, only because we know there's a distance geographically, but how different is Blackstone? What do they have for staffing? What is their call volume? You know, is a chance they may be at a call when they need to service Mendon. So all those things play into it. That's why I can't give you they're close or they are, all 3 could be viable, but it does come down to, service levels and their ability to do so.
We have to have a way to measure that, to have an understanding of how close we get to that. Anyway, okay, so we'll come back to that.
Just a real quick question on the Uxbridge proposal. I'm a little confused. The 12 hours per day, I would assume, is that during the normal business hours? Is that?
Yes, they would somewhat mirror what you have now.
Okay. And what would they do on the off hours? I see 1 part-time EMT paramedic on call. How are they going to? What are they counting on for fire coverage? If we had an incident for a fire, et cetera, are they going to rely on call? Are they going to rely on?
It would be their response plus their on-call force and maintaining Mendon's call force too.
Okay.
So they would be, they would be part of that also.
So I'm clear they'll be dispatching out of the Uxbridge station on those hours?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Keep on going.
So some of the options you could consider for shared services is to do nothing and continue addressing your fire department issues. You could further investigate legal, financial, and operational aspects of shared services to develop accurate and specific costs of shared services. At the same time, developing a timeline and strategic plan to implement shared services. Or you can negotiate and implement a tiered service agreement initially with shared staffing and service models, as we showed you as the different types of them. And then later on, after a time period, look at the consolidation of apparatus and equipment after the capital needs are determined, after you see how the shared services works. And also, you should consider short-term shared agreements to enter into with the ability to extend your agreements as your objectives and progress are made as you move forward. So we just suggest you don't get into a long-term contract right away. Do some short contracts with the ability to extend and...
Or untangle if need to.
And untangle, correct. Right. So that is our summary for you. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So the last page of your summary, you show a matrix.
It's a little bit of an eye chart at that font, huh?
It is. But it is, we can work on getting it bigger, but there was so much information that we took. This is a spreadsheet, and what it does is it gives you an idea of what the performance of each community is, what their staffing is like. Again, I mentioned fire calls and EMS calls earlier. That should all be looked at when you're considering is how you're going to improve your service for your citizens, and of course, the type of revenue that they may take in. It also talks about, gives you just a picture of how they use overtime, how many administrative staff they have, again, full-time, how many call firefighters, what are their participation levels, the various shift schedules that they work. And then it further goes on to, it just looks at how many stations in their community, how many engines, how many ladder trucks, how are their ambulances staffed, and what is the number and ranks of officers and personnel that they have.
There's a good amount of information on there. Are all three of the communities at sufficient scale to be staffed 7 by 24? All the time?
No.
Okay, so Uxbridge is, though, right? Uxbridge is staffed 7 by 24, is that right?
Yes.
In station, right?
Yep.
Hopedale, too, as well, I understand? Is that right?
Yes, they are.
Okay, but not Blackstone?
Blackstone is...
It is, so all three of them are staffed?
Yes, they are. But they also propose to add staffing.
All three proposals?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other communities within the Commonwealth that are doing this model right now?
Not this particular model. I know there are EMS services that share services. Some of the fire departments share services with them. I am not aware of a specific department, that is doing a shared service model.
Okay. So a lot of your information that you got based off of potential benefits, et cetera, I would assume are from other states then?
Yes.
Okay, which states did you look at?
We actually looked at some Midwest states, Illinois, Indiana, and we actually looked at some of their shared service planning, how they went about it. One state, actually, they enacted a law which created a committee to make up a framework of what shared services would look like statewide. So that type of service happens routinely over in the Midwest. We see it down in Maryland, where there's, they call it annexing down there, and basically they agree to cover each other, and typically in those type of instances, they send the nearest fire or rescue to the call.
Are their demographics similar to ours?
Yes, and then some very much larger, counties, and they're very strong in county government down south and the Midwest, so they operate county fire departments,
Yeah, Massachusetts is one of the few places that like to do everything 351 different times.
Yeah.
And I always say, when I talk about New Hampshire, our county system is county jails and nursing homes, and that's about all the strength of the county government that they have there. But in other ones, they're full-blown fire and EMS services.
Based on your discussions with other local chiefs throughout the Commonwealth, are there other communities within the Commonwealth that are looking at these types of?
There are, and as I mentioned earlier, we're getting to the point where we're running out of ideas. It only makes sense,
Running out of ideas to what?
To staff your department, come up with ways,
Our particular department?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm clear.
But there are a lot of departments here in Mass, regionally also, talking about finding ways to be able to keep up with the lack of funding, but still provide the services that they do to the communities.
Yeah. So I was expecting actually maybe a proposed recommendation or next steps from you.
Yeah, I spoke to Kim about this. We went in and we looked at that, but it would not serve you any good for us to speculate and give you a recommendation based on, again, if you once you get in and look at this spreadsheet, there are just so many different models. All three agencies recommend adding staff, but different numbers of staff, so your numbers would be skewed and they would be all over the place. So purely from a financial standpoint, as you stated earlier, that's not your goal. Your goal is what's going to serve the community best. So as you saw in my recommendation, this is just one of the steps that if the town is going to get interested in shared services, and then they're really going to have to, roll up their sleeves and get together with whoever they choose and start running numbers and plans and potential theories, and let alone, the legal aspect of it. I believe it was, well, I'm not sure who it was, but one of the three departments mentioned that they would consult with the Mass Department of Fire Service, Fire Marshal's office, and they were willing to have their legal team look at the state laws on bringing consolidations or anything, if there's anything that prevents it, if there's even a law, as well as if there's any other legal pieces from that end. And obviously, I'm sure, you're going to look to your counsel here to look at all those other types of issues too.
Logistically, I could only imagine how many complex issues there can be on this type of service.
There is. Very complex, but doable. It just, it'll take time.
I probably have 1,000 questions, and tonight's probably not the proper venue to tease them all out because I have to get my head around them. But really, it's more on the logistical piece of it. If it would make sense, it would take an awful lot to convince me that this would be the right way to go. It'd have to be 100%. I guess a last resort or the best option to provide the best safety to our community.
Right.
And I'm just not sure where I am with that right now.
Well, it's obviously not the last resort, because we could go to the people of Mendon and tell them we need another $500,000 a year and hire people 7x24 without the scale to justify that.
Well, that's what I mean, but that could be a first choice, that's my point. So we're saying the same thing. Mark, you have any comments?
I think we've obviously got a lot of information here to look at. We need to do something. This is obviously an option. We've tried to hire, a permanent firefighter. We were unsuccessful. Fire chief, yeah. We were unsuccessful at that, so we need to take steps to do what we need to do to make sure that our community gets the best services, and this is one aspect of, examining the next step, and so...
Even so, the hiring of a fire chief does not by itself make a dent in the improved service.
Correct.
Does not do it.
Right. That's very true.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I totally agree with that, but, clearly, in my opinion, a strong chief that's providing good management and oversight, and...
Is he going to man the fire station overnight to reduce response times from an average of 17 minutes down to sub 10 where it should be?
No, but he's going to be putting in... He'd be chartered with rebuilding the on-call department. He'd be chartered with providing good management and oversight. He would be, please hold your questions to the end. When I call for questions, I'll let you answer your question. There's a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of responsibilities that he's going to undertake to help improve the services. That's part of his charter. He's going to come back to us and make recommendations. I'm not saying that it's not going to be a financial obligation to that, but we're going to have to trust whoever we put into that position to make good, solid recommendations, as well as our intern chief that we're speaking with right now.
Well, we're 18 months into this and we're getting nowhere.
Well, yeah, obviously, we're 18 months into it and we're getting nowhere because we were unsuccessful in our first attempts of hiring an interim chief. All right. Any other comments? All right. Questions and comments? Mr. Fleury, name and street, please, for the record.
Couple things come to mind. Number one, I would like to know where that 17-minute number comes from. And I believe that number is on the overnights only. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. I would also like to report that the number of calls we get on the overnights is not a very, very large number. The number of calls we get in the year period is not a huge number compared to a lot of the other towns in the area. It does not take very many calls that took a long period of time for example, weather reasons that could very easily skew that number. So I would like to know a little bit where that number comes from. Because the straight average doesn't tell you really what's going on, number one.
Sure.
Number two, I used to stay at the station on the overnights. As people don't know, I'm on the department of call member, so I cover nighttime shifts. I used to stay there at night. However, it did not bode very well for my health, which is why I don't stay there overnight now. That station has had a water leak for a long period of time, which I know this year was finally addressed, but the upstairs air quality is not what it should be for people who are actually staying there. So it does add probably a minute or two, at least for me, to the response time, because I have to get up from home and drive down. Now, I don't have a very long drive, so I'm fairly close, but that does add the time. I'd be more than happy to stay there again as long as it doesn't impact my health. We'll start with there.
So definitely can get you an answer on number one. We can look to our consultant to answer that question.
It's documented in the MRI study, so
Yeah.
it's a public document.
It's a public.
That's what I was going
I
to
saw the
say.
rough numbers in the study because I had a copy that I read through it. There was a number of inaccuracies in there, and I did not see the raw data, which I'd love to, if I can collect it, I'll be more than happy to do that and do an analysis as well. But just using a raw average is not a very good way to present the data. It doesn't give you a clear picture of what's actually.
In all fairness, I would have to trust our consultants on the amount of energy that they put into this document and the amount of data collection that they did to verify its accuracy. I don't think...
The number wasn't accurate. The average number might very well be accurate, but you can't just look at a single number to get an answer to exactly what's going on. For example, if you have 10 calls on the overnights, and I'll just use rough numbers, one of those calls takes you 25 minutes because there's 3 feet of snow on the ground, and everything else takes you 9, guess what? It's going to be more than the 10 minutes.
Well, it's based on averages, right?
But see, you're making the point, frankly, which is that we do not have the scale to bury a couple of long response times into a whole bunch of other shorter response times. You're making the point. And additionally, there's no way, I mean, this Board of Selectmen can't say, okay, well, look, we hired a management consultant who does this stuff professionally, and then say, well, you know, we'll have somebody in the fire department relook at the numbers and give us another analysis. I mean, that's just silly.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you can't just look at one number.
Okay, well, I think the management study is pretty comprehensive. If nobody's had the opportunity to review it, I would encourage you to review it. And
he wants to make a comment on that.
Okay.
And to your point, we can only work with the information that we got. The information that we got was taken directly from the town of Mendon, and that's how we got our figures, which are clearly stated in the report. But I think the bigger point that's missing too, and that you certainly know, is one part of it is, the elongated response time, but the bigger piece is the citizens of this town deserve equal fire and EMS protection, throughout a 24-hour period. So it's really a matter of a quality of services and consistency in services.
Okay. Any other comments? This gentleman here.
Steve Brennick, 77 Hartford Ave East. Pretty good presentation. I see you talk about like the ladders, the engines, and all that, but are they staffed all the time? You don't state that, number one. Number two, it looks like from your recommendation, it's cheapest to most expensive. Being Uxbridge, we're not going to have 24-hour coverage here. You're going to have 5 personnel on, Uxbridge, 5 personnel on duty. So my question is, they're coming out of Uxbridge. I'm going at least 2 nights a week at my firehouse in Attleboro, and on for 20 years. I want to make sure that people are getting their ASAP. And if they come from Uxbridge and I live down here, fire doubles every 30 seconds. They're not going to make it there in time. I have 3 young children. I can't have that on my conscience. Like, I don't think anybody wants that on their conscience. Then you look at the Hopedale, which isn't bad, but they're out of Hopedale. We don't have coverage in this town at night. I just recently found out that we don't have coverage at night. I mean, I've lived here for 6 years. I always assumed it. That was my fault for assuming. But if we don't have coverage in town, I don't think it's good. I think we need it in town. And the revenue, there's just so many questions. I have a list of them. Find the money we're going to lose from the ambulance going, they're going to get it. I understand with benefits and everything else inside. Nowadays, we have trouble hiring. We're going back to hiring basics because we can't get the medics. But you're throwing a stipulation that they have to go to medic school and get their medic in so many years or they lose their job. Yeah. There are ways to get around it. I just feel that this, for my family and for what I want, isn't acceptable. And I understand finances is the toughest thing. You made a comment about an override and getting people to vote for it. Well, maybe we have to do that. I'd be more than willing to vote for an override and vote yes if we can get 24 coverage in this station right over here rather than another station. I just feel the numbers, you're looking at numbers, and it comes down to the cheapest for the town. And I just don't think that's the way to look at it. When you're putting people's lives out there, what is a life worth? Is it worth $400,000? Is it worth $1 million? I can tell you right now, my family's life is priceless. And if my kids die, I'll be pissed. And I apologize for that language, but it is. It infuriates me because I've been doing it for 20 years, and I know how fast we got to get there. I know what we need to do. And you can't show up with 5 guys, or 3 guys, or 2 guys at a structure fire that's ripping pretty good and expect to have something. They all come be fine, because you got to look out for your own guys. And when a place is ripping, you're not going to send them into a house because you're going to lose people. Okay. It's a tough situation. Trust me, I would not want to have to be in front, like, doing this. But I think going outside is bad, and I think it's possibly going to hurt people.
Okay.
And like I said, I can't wait. I hope we have a coffee hours or whatever it is.
Okay.
Because I really like that. I got a ton of questions.
Okay.
So,
All right, we got other comments. Thank you.
Wait a minute, I'd like to say something.
Sure.
So I just want to say that I think in terms of our position, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my mind, as much as maybe some of these things are about numbers, for me, it's more about ensuring that anything we do, regardless of what direction we go, it's about the services that we have. I want to see an improvement in those services. That's the bottom line for me. Whether it costs a little more to go with Uxbridge, which I know from what you're saying, it looks like we're going off numbers, but it's pretty comprehensive information that we got from the towns, specifically Uxbridge. And again, it comes down to the services they're going to provide. The number is going to be there, whether we do it in town or out of town. So I just want to make that clear, that if it appears that we're only looking at numbers, that's not the case.
so not you. Management group probably
Okay.
has to look at
I just want to make sure you know that
Yeah, no,
this board won't base any decision off of
And I
the
didn't,
numbers.
if that's the way it came across, I apologize. That's not what
That's
it
okay.
So can I just add something to that?
Go ahead.
What I also want to say is it's important for people to remember that operational overrides in the town of Mendon pass at the rate of 25%. Okay? Good luck getting an operational override through. If we can do it, I would agree with you. I would love to have that station staffed 7 by 24. Would love it. That would be fantastic. I mean, the older I get, every time I turn around, I'm going dizzy and falling down. So one of these days, I can see myself need to be picked up. Believe me, that's what I want. But if we can't have that, if we can have something at least better than we have, we shouldn't just stay where we're at. We should get the best of whatever we can have whenever we can have it. And that is our approach, and I agree with Mr. Riedel 100% on that.
Yeah, and also just a comment on the direction to our consultants. It wasn't purely just based on dollars, so I would be surprised if the consultants made that recommendation just based purely on dollars. So you want to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We look at all aspects of it, and not to be facetious, but really what you're looking at is a proposal. And we asked, we had interested communities, and we asked, give us your best look at how you think something like this might work. So that's purely what they're looking at proposals. And it's certainly, at the very least, a topic that they can bring up for discussion. But I can assure you, MRI has done many studies, and it really is never done on just purely financial. It's done on the makeup. Have you seen the management letter?
No.
Is that public?
Yes.
It is public.
You may want to look at that too. That'll give you a real good insight into how this all ties in.
Other comments?
Danny Cottle, District Professional Firefighters of Mass. I'm not a Mendon resident, so I would request the Chairman to speak.
Sure.
As you mentioned, I have a million questions. Probably not the time for all the 1 million questions I ask, so I'll just sum it down to just a couple. And it's been briefly touched upon, but how will this so-called shared services impact the services for the individual communities? So let me just give you an example. We're picking on Uxbridge, but if Uxbridge's got a busy day, they got to work in fire, who prioritizes if a call in Mendon comes in and they're all tied up in their own town? That's my question number one. My question number two is, we keep saying the shared services. Shared services to me, it's kind of a false statement, because that would mean the Mendon firefighters working with one of these three communities. And if I'm not mistaken, 2 if not 3 of these proposals basically kicks the Mendon firefighters to the curb. Gives them the opportunity to put in for the new job, but I believe a couple of those communities are civil service, so the Mendon guys won't even qualify for that. So basically what it does is take the Mendon firefighters, the guys and the girls who've been serving this community for years, and kicks them to the curb.
Did you read the MRI study, sir?
I read...
Did you read the MRI study?
No, I read...
I suggest you read the MRI study.
I'm just asking because it's written in the...
It'll be answered in the MRI study.
Then I would like a copy of the MRI study.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's see if we can get you a copy of that. In respect to the shared services and how it impacts other communities, I'll defer to MRI. I used to be a call firefighter, so I know a little bit about it. What I envisioned, and this is the direction I'm giving our consultant as well, what I would envision is just like any other working fire. We're a small community. We do, municipal support, obviously, to other communities when we have a working fire. Mutual aid. I would assume that we would continue on doing that. And every proposal so far that I've heard has discussed increasing staffing levels. So I believe the increase in staffing levels as well as the municipal aid will end up pulling that all together, just like, it's working today.
As you well know, mutual aid is definitely a delay in getting from the state to the door.
Absolutely.
Great amount of time and not responsible.
Absolutely. That's, one of the reasons when I looked at Uxbridge is I was concerned and I brought up the question I brought up earlier.
Thank you for listening.
You're welcome. Ma'am?
Nancy McCary, 5 Newbury Drive. Are the documents and letters referenced here tonight going to be available online to look at?
Do we have them online?
We can put them online?
Yeah, we'll make sure that they're put online. Yep. Mr. Phipps?
Charlie Phipps, 15 Main Street. I went downtown.
Can you stand up, because I think a lot of people want to be able to hear you.
I went downstairs earlier to the clerk's office to get a copy of the town charter. Is there a town charter?
A town charter? In respect to what?
What are you getting at?
Well, basically, we're looking to see if the town has a charter on file that governs fire departments.
Did Margaret, did you talk to Margaret?
Yeah, she said there wasn't.
Yeah, I don't think there was.
She would be the holder of that document if there was one, so if she's saying there isn't, then
So there's one.
I don't know if there is or if there isn't, but I would have to trust Margaret being our clerk.
And I have another question, too. What input is the town residents going to have in this? Is it going to go to a town vote?
Ultimately, it's up to the Board of Selectmen on which direction we go in. We haven't discussed that as a board yet, so I can't answer your question, but ultimately, it is up to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, and if I could, one more. Has there been any research at all as far as trying to get us staff 24/7 from the board?
Again, we're just going through the report and listening to our consultants, and this is, a different step in the process because we've had such struggles with hiring a full-time chief. We spent 18 months, as Selectman Schofield said earlier, interviewing potential candidates, and we've come up short. So MRI came back to us and made the recommendation to look into this. This purely informational. It was out-of-the-box thinking on trying to find a way to improve the services of our community.
So I'd like to make a commitment right now. So when we got the override through for the school, now there's a variety, I don't want to go back over and relitigate the override for the school, but the reasons why I supported it and the school people supported it were two different things and it well known. But the success of that override was primarily dependent upon, and I know I'm going to embarrass her, a single person who solely focused on driving that result. And I know she screwed up her face, but she did, is having somebody focus, Miss Mrs. Nicholson focused on that, drove a lot of people, worked it, and organized that effort in Mendon. So if there's somebody willing to take that same role relative to any override we would need for here, I would promise to take up the selectment side of the research for that, to work with that person to see if that's a feasible goal.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Jim?
Deborah Phipps, Main Street. I keep hearing over and over that you can't find fire chief. Why? I get why. Anybody knows that?
Maybe I can have our consultants help us on that one.
Fire chiefs evaluate the communities they want to go and work in. And if they look at fire departments and feel there's a lot of tension or issues with the department, they're not going to come to the department.
Why aren't we fixing that? Why, instead of looking out and saying we have problems, why isn't anyone inside who has the ability to fix what they perceive as being wrong trying to fix it?
Can I ask the audience, who has read the MRI management letter? Look around you. Please take the time. They're going to post it on the website.
Yeah. Excuse me. I just want to make sure the questions come through through me. Okay. I want to keep some organization to this, and I'm trying to avoid the back and forth dialogue.
Where is the document?
The document's going to be posted online.
But it hasn't been so far, so no one can read it, could have read it prior to.
No, people have asked, and I've sent it out to people who have asked for it. I think I don't know if he's here, Mr. Flanagan asked for it. I forwarded it to him, and a number of other people asked for it, and anybody that wants it can have it.
Okay, but it hasn't been readily available.
That's okay.
It's as readily as available as any other public document in Mendon. Not every document we own is on the website. We can't put every document we own on the website.
So we're going to place the document on the website. Clearly, we're not making a decision tonight. Have an opportunity to take a look at it, and, it'll be part of future discussions, I'm sure. Sir?
My name is Richard McCann. I'm president of the Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts. Again, I don't live in town, so...
That's fine. Go for it. Yep.
Have either MRI or anyone, there's labor laws in the state that these are other unionized firefighters. Has there been negotiations or impact bargain? Have those other communities in the unions accepted the work?
This is,
Were able to do it?
I can't answer for the other communities and the proposals they've put to us. What I can tell you is that this is the first informational session we've had, and I couldn't even begin to even comment on that. We haven't even considered even negotiating something like this.
The answer is simply no, because you can't impact bargain for something you haven't agreed on yet.
That's right.
Or even provisionally agreed on yet, so the answer is no.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even if you accept one of these proposals,
we still have lots of work to do.
We'd have to then talk to the other town, and that's when they would likely begin that process.
I mean, I would say again, Chairman Burke, again, that this is early days. This is not like this is like way down the path. I mean, the town is learning pretty early in the process that this is something that has popped up as a potential opportunity to solve the problems we have.
Yeah.
if I could just follow, what's way down the path? Is it 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years?
Boy, I have no idea. I'll be honest with you.
Hopefully not 10.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that during the interview process, certainly the chiefs that were interested in a proposal were seasoned, experienced fire chiefs who all brought up on their own that they very well understood there were collective bargaining agreements, and that was a part of the whole process.
Another thing that maybe people should understand is at least one of the proposals, maybe two of them, were unsolicited.
Yeah.
We didn't ask for them. They came to us. Yeah.
Sure.
Which one was that? Sorry.
Which one was it?
Hopedale.
Hopedale.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Mr. Zarella.
Fire department don't live in town, where you can speak.
Absolutely.
If I could follow up with this, he made a mention about an override, he would be in favor of one. Just information for everybody, because there's a lot of information.
Mike, can you speak up a little louder? People at home are complaining they can't hear. Maybe, yeah.
So this gentleman, thank you very much, said he would be in favor of an override if that was necessary. I just want to make sure, since so much new information is coming out, your fire department's only been staffed full-time since early 2000s, at which time it was funded from within the general budget. So there has never been an override for the fire department.
That's right.
So if I could just ask you, please, respectfully, to be a little more cautious when you two were going back and forth earlier. You said something along the lines of, just tell the people we need another $500,000 to fund it. That's a frightening number. To boot, it would never had an operational override. My next question would be...
Well, that's a comment. That was a comment, right?
I don't understand the comment, though, I have to be honest with you. That didn't make sense to me.
It's scary, I think, is to throw a number out here.
Well, we don't want to use anecdotal numbers, is what you're saying.
Yeah, then subtract the number. I just pulled something out of the air to make a point. That's fine.
But, we've never had an override, so if that ever came to the table, keep that in mind. That would be great, get what we need for once. Then again, Mr. Hartwell slightly touched on it. We keep referring to this as shared services, and I think that's very misleading. This is contracted services. If we're going to have the town come in and cover us, no employees are working for that department from this town, and we're paying them. We're contracting somebody to come in and do something. If Allen has Hopedale come in and plow all the roads with none of the Mendon employees and pays them completely for doing it, we've contracted the highway department from Hopedale.
Would you like to comment on that? On the definition of shared services? Because I think that's tripping a lot of people up.
Yeah, well, when we looked at it too, you don't want to call it regionalization because that wouldn't really meet the definition of regionalization either. It's more the concept of sharing the services and how you get there, whether it's by contract or written mutual aid agreements that you typically do. The term is shared service.
On call could be.
We explored those options. Like an automatic aid with Hopedale, they beat us to the last fire. Ms. Flanagan, I'm very sorry for the loss. Ms. Flanagan. They're staffed. They get there 5 minutes within the call. I live in Millville. I used to have a town vehicle that I would respond in. I had it for 4 years. Now what I have to do, get in my truck, respond to the station, get in that car, then respond to the fire.
Okay, we don't want to get into the logistics of it. We understand the point. We understand the point, yeah. And not to shut you off, but I think what it is that clearly we have, an interim chief that's going to be able to come in, well, not yet, but soon, I hope, coming in that's going to be able to help comment on logistical issues that you're going on. I think in respect to the shared services, obviously there's no negotiations that have taken place whatsoever. This is the beginning stages of informational, with the primary objective to ensuring that that our community is first and foremost totally safe in receiving the services that they would receive in any other community in respect to response times, and then the management oversight, period. And it's either through a full-time fire chief or it's through some type of agreement with another community, whatever we call it. Mr. Fleury.
So realizing that there's what I'll classify as short-term and longer-term goals, can we perhaps put a little bit of emphasis on making that station's second floor, I hesitate to use the term, but I'll call it, just use it for clarity, habitable, so that in and of itself will cut down on the overnight response times, which seem to be the impetus for this whole.
We just opened up a warrant tonight, so if there's something that needs to go on the warrant, then we should have it discussed.
I don't know if it takes something to that level, but if the air quality can be tested and verified that it's pretty much safe, so that those of us that do work the overnights can sleep there, I don't mind doing it again.
Yeah.
And that will cut down at least by a couple minutes anyway.
Yeah, Ms. Newman, I don't even know how to respond to that.
The last time we had air quality testing done in the town hall, it was conducted by the fire department.
Okay.
So perhaps they could. It was. Bucky actually tested the offices downstairs.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, without having maybe we talked to the building inspector. I mean, we don't have a facilities manager in the town, and that's another issue. Or somebody who goes around and takes care of the general, facilities. Clearly somebody needs to come up with some sort of action plan in order to do that. So I would just have to defer it to your office. Okay? Any other comments, questions, sir?
Would this be a contract type, like a certain amount of time? Is there an end to an expiration date? Like say for some reason the board does select to go with Oakdale, just say Uxbridge, whoever. Would it be like this is it forever? Or is it, this is going to be like a contract, 3-4 years, and then it ends, and then we go through this whole process again? And if the selectmen do choose to go with this, would we end up still working to make a Mendon Fire Department? So we have guys in town 24/7 in our own station rather than coming basically mutual aid. I didn't read, like I said, I haven't read the thing, so when it goes up, I'll read it. But nothing was mentioned about how long.
Obviously, everything's going to be negotiated. It's going to be on a contract basis, in my opinion, if we were ever to choose going in this direction. First and foremost, I wouldn't accept anything other. I also wouldn't accept anything other than a severability agreement. If I am very unhappy with the service, guess what? You're gone. Logistically, I don't know what that means if we would ever choose to even go in that direction. I can't even begin to sort that out, but I would say that clearly we would need an execution plan on either rebuilding our fire services back up or going with another community. I don't know what that means. This is the plethora of questions that I have. This is truly a beginning stages of an informational just to think out of the box because we've been so challenged on the management and oversight of the department, period. Our chief, chief has been trying to manage it operationally now for, a year now, chief? In 17 months? Yeah, I mean, it's hard on him, it's taxing on him. We clearly need a good, solid management and ensuring that we get our response times down.
The most important part of any agreement, particularly in the initial stages, is the very part that's actually is shared service, which is sharing and maintaining our own infrastructure. We can't yield our ambulance, we can't yield our trucks, we can't yield our equipment. We have to maintain that no matter what the case. So that part, it may not be the operational and the staff that's necessarily shared, if we're going to pick on the definition, but that the CapEx itself will have to be shared. And as long as we do, theoretically, we could unwind easy. Believe me, there's no way we would sign an agreement that we could not unwind easily, particularly in that first year. Because it either meets the metrics, the safety metrics that we're looking to hit per the MRI study, or it does not. And if it doesn't, we don't want it.
And that's why I think we don't want regionalization, because then we just lose everything that's ours.
You bring up one concern that I'm a call person, I'm not full-time. So I know one of the issues that arose in this study is the fact that we have a relatively small call department. Well, there's one very good reason for that, and that is you don't pay us. Okay? We get paid flat rate of $166 a month, whether we come back for one call or we come back for 20. It's been that way for a long time. It was done that way, I was told, because with the hourly pay of many years ago, you'd have a couple months where you couldn't afford to pay anybody. You had no more money in the budget. So they went to the stipend system. That's great. Well, apparently this has been going on for like 15 years.
Yeah, Mr. Fleury, I have to...
Can we address that?
Get
people into, help to get the...
Listen, in respect to, the operational aspect of the department, clearly my goal is to leverage our chief, all right? Whoever that may be, and start making recommendations to us. I have never been in favor of that stipend, Never. I was in agreement with it when they did it back well prior to this board. I've never been in agreement with it. I can't say that we can change it right now. I would rather yield to whichever chief we have come in or whichever direction we go in. I can tell you based off of what I've seen and I've heard, either if we were to go with shared services or hire a full-time chief, we have to do a lot of work on our call department, period. We have to do a lot of work. We have to get more call firefighters in here. I guarantee no matter which department came in here, if we did shared services, they're going to want to leverage a call department.
But Mr. Fleury is absolutely right.
Yes.
1,000%. I absolutely agree with you. I mean, if you read the MRI study, you guys talk a lot about all the training that even the call firefighters have to have. There's a lot. And who wants to do all that, given the current economic benefit that you get or you don't get? So 1,000% I agree with you, and something's got to be done, and it's been said before, and it will be done.
The only reason I brought it up is that you keep saying, when the chief. I mean, in theory, it's going to happen soon, but again, had something been addressed about this 18 months ago, we might not be where we are today. We could very well have a larger department.
Yeah, possibly, but you also have to remember we've been in a position of flux.
I understand.
Look, we're not fire chiefs. We don't know what the hell we're doing. I mean, that's why we seek an expert. That's why we've now. Well, of course. I mean, it would be silly for us to say anything else.
We've admitted that before.
I think so. Yeah. We're an expert on a lot of things.
Okay, let's move on. I'm going to open it up for a couple more comments, and then I'm going to shut it down because we have other business to do tonight. Mr. Zarella?
Quick, easy. Great job putting this together. Is there a proposal for fixing what we have? Increasing staffing, what that would cost, increasing the call department stipends, what that would cost. Mr. Schofield, I can quote you said if somebody here was willing to put the information together for an override, you would look into.
Not just put the information together, they need to talk to Mrs. Nicholson and ask her what she had to do to get that other override through. That's what they got to be prepared to do.
Talking
Can we have him? His company's already got all this information together.
Yeah, Mrs. Zarella, I think from my standpoint, from the board, clearly we have an interim fire chief, hopefully coming in starting tomorrow. Clearly we're going to have I have a bunch of questions. If we're able to successfully hire a chief, if that's the direction that we go in, I really want to look at the chief and hear his recommendations and ideas for the department. I think, go ahead.
I know you had a lot of trouble finding the chief. Chief Kersey's been running our department for 18 months. Have you done interviews with the chiefs or the candidates who wouldn't take the positions to find out what the problem is? I mean, there's got to be something there. If it was all internal and personnel, then I would think that Chief Kersey would clean house.
I think that the consultant answered that question, but I'll allow him to answer it again if he chooses to. Go ahead. It's up to you.
The reality is again, I don't mean to repeat myself. Fire chiefs know how to find documents and go read the MRI report. It tells a story that'll tie a lot of this in, and that's part of our job is to. MRI is not in business to go in and tear down departments. It's actually to help build them up and put them back on a path of success. So that's what we do. That's our job.
Okay. All right. No more comments on that, sir. Last comment.
Bill Cabral, I'm Secretary Treasurer of the Professional Fire Massachusetts. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, fine.
I've heard a lot of things about either we call it regionalizing or shared service or whatever the model name you're going to use. But in my opinion, I've been a firefighter for 25 years, been around the state, been around the country. I've never really heard it. I've heard we want to go 24/7. That's going to cost a big number. I heard we want to go and farm out stuff to another town possibly. And if that happens, what happens if there's a financial crackdown in that town and all of a sudden they have to roll back their services in their own town? You think they're gonna come here before they're gonna take care of their own people? Just questions, and if you did go that route and you didn't have to pull the switch to get out of it, how are you gonna get a fire department back in this town that quick? I think you have a gem here because you have a highly functioning fire department that has a call side and that has a professional side, paid professional side, that's what we refer to it. Not that to call people a non-professional, that's not what we get. But I haven't heard anything talk about a measured approach that over time you're going to let your chief, if it's Chief Harris, it's well-known chief throughout the state, if they're going to come in and actually have a measured approach and say, over a 5-year span, this is what we're going to work towards. And we're going to put people on every year, so you don't maybe have to go out to the townspeople and ask for the huge override, but you can keep the services that you have in town in place. There's nothing more important in any municipality than the education of the children and the public safety. And I think the townspeople, I think you'd be shocked at how much they want to come out and vote for whatever it takes to keep this fire department sustainable.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Have you read the MRI report?
I have.
I think you need. I think you need to read it too.
I actually have a question on that. No disrespect to MRI, but what qualifications does MRI? I came in late, so if you said it before, I apologize.
Well, you can follow the links in the document to find that.
They have to.
Yes.
Links in the document to find that.
Just a quick comment on the last speaker here, and then I'm going to shut it down and say some final comments. You bring up a lot of valid points, and that's certainly things that we need to tease out if this was the direction we were going to go in. Please, everybody, we are not looking at this lightly on any direction we're going in. We, have gone after looking for a new chief. We've been unsuccessful. There's a lot of issues that have to be fixed. We're doing the best job that we can to ensure the safety of our community, that it has the proper management oversight, and that, we're going to be reducing our call volume. This is purely informational based off of the recommendation of our consultants. We're working really hard. There's a plethora of questions. I mean, all the questions that you mentioned right now and all the comments, I guarantee everybody on this board shares the same sentiment, without a doubt. We'll systematically take it through, and eventually we're going to have to make a decision on which way we go, with the ultimate goal that we've highlighted now probably 10 times. So with that, I just want to say thank you, and unless you guys have any other comments on that.
I just want to say, I'm not going to say much, but you have to remember we also live in this community, so our main goal isn't always about money. I know I've said this a little while ago, but whatever we do, you need to know that we are doing it because we feel, with professional assistance, that it is the best thing for our town to bring the services we need at a price that makes sense.
Obviously we have a lot to tease out, and I'm clearly don't know which direction I'm going in, but, obviously more discussion to happen. I just want to say thank you very much for everybody's interest in this. Thank you very much for the comments and questions. I think they were great. Certainly helps me process a little bit more. And we will definitely notify everybody of the next time we discuss this, and most likely we'll try to arrange some dates to do something down the senior center or whatever. And I thank everybody for their respect, for just working through this professionally, and we'll just keep it moving forward. All right.
Yeah, thank you for that.
All right. So thank you very much, everybody. And I think the next thing on the agenda is just some executive session stuff. So, as Rich walks away, let everybody go out, and then we'll just do executive session.
So as everyone is leaving, it will be up later tonight. Dan will have both things on the main page, both the presentation tonight and the MRI letter on the home page, but not for a couple of hours.
MRI report, because I'll give it to you.
Actually, I want to give that to somebody else. Do you mind?
Yeah, and I got it.
Hey, Rich, go get that guy's email and we'll send it to him.
Yeah.